Hey friend, this is Becky Harmon, and today I just want to talk to you about two or three things that you can do if God has laid on your heart to write a book and you want to get started. Because honestly, writing and this kind of leadership where you're discipling people through your story is a stewardship that God has given you. And so I just want to help you get started feeling that you're obeying God and that you have just a little bit kind of taking you from, having this much vision to a little bit narrow, a little bit narrow. And so I pray that this will help you to get started, okay? So the first thing I want to just share with you is that there is a lot of pressure on people when they begin to write. And part of it's due to social media. And by the way, you won't find me on Facebook. You won't find me on Twitter because when I stopped coaching, I bumped off of all that. I'm still on LinkedIn if you want to contact me. And I still actually read the emails that people send me and the questions, which is why I'm even doing this video because someone reached out to me and asked me. But I really just wanted, after I laid down coaching, to spend more time in prayer. And social media was just a huge distraction for me. So, with that said, I just want to encourage you that it could be part of why you feel so much pressure because you are comparing yourself to other people. And so that's the first thing I wanted to share with you is that you have to begin your process with the desire to impact two people, five people, 10 people. It's not, I want to write a bestseller and I want to be published by the biggest Christian authors. This is between you and God and you being obedient, okay? And take the pressure off of yourself because if you're sharing your story and you're writing your book for the glory of God, then you most certainly are going to be empowered to finish what you start, okay? So that doesn't mean you are not going to have to block time and get an editor or someone to go through your manuscript. It doesn't mean every word's going to be anointed and it's going to be easy to write. A matter of fact, and that's part of even why I wrote my book, Four Phases of Spiritual Warfare, was because people really don't understand when they begin to pray and then match that with works. Because again, James, it's faith and works. It's one thing for you to talk about what you're going to do for 5 years, but then when you commit and you block that time, you begin to get spiritual warfare for that. And so, that's why I believe in prayer. That's why I wrote that book. And so basically you are just being faithful with what God has laid on your heart to do, and you're going to begin to write. Okay. So you're going to block a certain amount of time. Now, I know this may sound crazy to you, but it's going to be whatever works for you. For me, I cannot work I'm very auditory. So if people are talking to me or the morning is really the best time of day for me. So when I was writing I wrote like 4 coaching manuals. I've written a ton of ebooks for my business. I wrote a book. I always did that at like 4:30 in the morning. So I got my coffee. I spent a few minutes and amount of time in prayer, just asking the Lord to help me write. And then I would write for 1 hour. Okay. And then the next day, I would go look at what I had written, change anything I wanted to change, and I would write one more paragraph. Okay, so don't put yourself on a deadline. This is just you being faithful. So when I say don't put yourself on a deadline, like shoot for a year. Like, hey, in 2022, I want to have my first book, because you do have to have some kind of timeline, but don't put yourself under a huge amount of pressure. So the other thing I just want to encourage you with is that sometimes I meet a lot of people who are perfectionists. Perfectionist, it's a really driving spirit. And so when I'm telling you, you're not aiming for perfection with this book. You're aiming for the heart of your message, your story to be shared, and God to get the glory. Okay, so when you sit down to write, do not, that was the mom coach, do not um, correct punctuation. Don't worry if you're writing run on sentences. Don't write. I'm having people email me from across the world and their English is not very good. Don't worry about all that, okay? Your main intent when you start writing is just to get the spigot. It's like you're turning on the spigot. Imagine how much crisis you would feel if you had to turn on the spigot, you had to go sterilize the bottles of, you had to purify your water, then you had to figure out a marketing plan in the middle of that on who you were going to sell it. No, don't do that to yourself. Uh, you write for one person or two people or three people. And this is really genuinely what I always thought, and this is what motivated me to always finish what I started. I could actually cry telling you this. I thought to myself, and I prayed, Lord, if this changes one woman's life, then it was worth all the effort I put into this. If my video changes two people or it helps three people, is that enough for you to be obedient to God? And my answer was always yes, because I wanted my legacy to be spiritual. And I wanted my legacy to be, God, you gave me a gift. You told me to write, and I did it. And so please don't worry if you are, because I mean, who writes anything or does anything and doesn't want to be successful? Okay, so of course I have the images going through my mind. Oh, some Christian, publisher is going to pick up my book and they're going to love it and they're going to ask me to write more. You know, that's real. I have the same kind of thoughts, but I didn't write for that focus. I just kind of looked at that as like a desire. Who wouldn't want to be successful? But I wasn't going to be defined by if I had, and honestly, right now, last time I looked on Amazon at my book, there was like 11 reviews and they already bumped down my price because I hadn't sold enough. But you know what? I use that book in my coaching practice. I spoke with that book. I ministered to people for years out of that book. And I had the people that really were changed by that book would send me personal emails like, I feel like you read my mail. This was my story and the exact things happened to me. And I'm so glad I wasn't crazy. So this kind of brings me to the last thing I want to talk to you about on this video is that I want you to start with your first chapter, okay? And in your first chapter, I want you to share a little bit about your childhood, your upbringing, maybe what your struggles were, what kind of child you were. Like in my book, I talk about what a handful I was for my mother because I grew up in an alcoholic home and I was just angry. And I was, it's funny, I have a lot of energy. I'm like going to be 57 this year. But I still have the same amount of energy I had in my 20s, like I got to be doing something. I'm already, so retired from coaching for me has not really changed my energy level or my lifestyle. I got tons to do and I love the amount of prayer I can be in. But anyway, that's just to say that I want you to share your story about your childhood, some quirky things maybe that, pet names people had for you. Basically what I want you to do is I want you to give people a glimpse into who you were before the work of God happened in your life. Now, if you got saved at 5 years old, absolutely share that story. But I know I didn't. And so I kind of went in a direction that was not great. And so I ended up sharing some of that in the first chapter. Now, the reason why I want you to, the other reason I want you to do this is because I want to help you disciple other people with this book, okay? And if you have never led a book club, or you've never led prayer in your church, or you don't consider yourself a leader, I want to challenge you right now. If God is telling you to write a book, it's for really your testimony to encourage and strengthen other people. So when you're writing, I want you to visualize 5 people, maybe 10 people sitting in your living room or at your kitchen table, and you have sent them home with their first assignment, which is to read the first chapter of your book, and maybe put some questions in there, because here's what's going to happen when they come back and they meet to go through your book. You're going to ask them to share a little their story, because when you're doing discipleship, group discipleship, or teams, or anything like that, the best work that you get done, and I did teams for 13, 14 years, the best work you do is when people feel safe and they feel like you've been transparent and you've been authentic and you've been vulnerable, and they can be the same way. They don't have to worry about being judged, and they can share who they are. So again, you're going to use this to disciple other people. And I've always thought about this. This is just kind of a quirky thing that I don't even know if I shared this with anybody, but I honestly don't know why more churches don't do some kind of discipleship program where they ask people in their congregation, hey, maybe you're a pastor watching this right now, and I think this is like such a great idea, but I don't have a church. So if you do, asking people in your church, do you have a testimony? Would you be interested in writing your own book or your own discipleship material? And we will support you in that. We'll provide you with an editor to go through your stuff, and we will help you get started making disciples. Is that like brilliant or what? I know that was from the Holy Spirit. And so because I think about Revelations 12:11, we overcame through the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And so I love just that whole thought process. So I hope this helped you today. And again, if you feel like you need support with overcoming the spiritual warfare, the name of that book, literally it's under $5 now. It's on Amazon, 4 Phases of Spiritual Warfare by Becky Harmon. And then if you have any questions, and you think, here's the only thing I ask you, because I, of course, I have a family and, everything going on in my life. If you feel like your question would help other people and I could do a video to help everybody else, send me your question. If you want me to pray, I love to pray for people. So if you want me to pray over your manuscript or your book, just send me your name, tell me what your focus is, and I'll be more than happy to put you in my prayer time every day. So good luck. And when we say good luck, we mean may God bless you. May He increase your ministry and give you clarity for writing His story in your life. All right, take care.